Well, hello, confirmands. Welcome back to confirmation class. This is Lutheran Foundations. It's a confirmation curriculum. This is year 1, lesson 20. Year 1 is called It Starts Here, Stories of the Old Testament, and lesson 20 is Saul and David, part 2. When we left off, David has just killed the Philistine giant Goliath. He has answered the challenge of the giant. He's defended the honor of Israel. He's killed the giant first by stunning him with a stone from his slingshot and then cutting off the giant's head with his own sword. Israel has had this remarkable victory where they've demoralized and driven off the Philistines, and David is celebrated by the whole country. One of the first things that happen is that Saul's son Jonathan and David become friends. And this is one of the great friendships of the Bible because Jonathan has everything to lose being a good friend to David. That under the ordinary course of things, the crown prince wouldn't befriend anybody who has even a chance of trying to make a play for the throne. That you have to push those people aside, down, kill them. But Jonathan is inspired by David, and the two of them become absolutely beautiful friends with one another. A friendship that Saul increasingly doesn't like, and that he increasingly tells his son, Jonathan, is really a stupid idea. But at the moment we're riding high. David has had this smashing victory. Saul doesn't actually give him his daughter to marry. He marries her off to someone else. But David takes that insult well, and he's a faithful servant to Saul. Saul does put David in charge of the army, and David becomes just a brilliant commander. I mean, he's a kid, but he's got something in him. He's got a charisma. People want to follow him. People love him. He's brave. They remember what he did with Goliath. And David starts stringing together little victories, as this people or that people are making trouble. The Philistines are making trouble here or there. Saul sends David out, and David just deals with it. Saul is feeling pretty good about this. Big picture, he doesn't have to go stand in the sun or risk his life anymore because David's doing that. But then one day Saul is hanging out, and he hears some women go past who've made up a song, and they're singing this song. And the first line of the song is about how Saul has killed his thousands, and Saul is feeling really good about that. But the next line of the song is about how David has killed his tens of thousands. And Saul, right there, something switches in Saul, and he gives in to jealousy. We're going to talk a lot about this as the 3 years of confirmation go past. This thing, when you let yourself slip into jealousy, right, it's poisonous. And it poisons you. It doesn't poison the person that you're jealous of. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick or die. Jealousy, envy, rage, these things that you can let yourself get into, can let yourself fall into. They're desperately bad places, and they're horrible for you. At any rate, Saul gives in to jealousy here, and it turns him, it twists him, it makes him more and more bitter, makes him weaker and weaker, less and less able to defend himself and his crown against someone like David. And he still calls David to sing for him, but he gets so mad that he tries to kill David. Twice he throws his spear at David. David is young and agile and nimble, and both times he avoids the spear. But this can't continue. That you can't have the king trying to kill the commander of his own army. He winds up stripping David down from being the commander of all of the armies to just having a company of soldiers, and David just takes the demotion. He doesn't make a big deal of it. He continues to do his job, to go wherever he's sent, He continues to win these little victories, and David and Saul's youngest daughter, a young woman named Michal, fall in love with each other, and they want to get married. Now, Saul sets a price. I'll let you marry my daughter if you can go kill 100 Philistines and prove to me that they're dead. You go ahead and read your Bible for the kind of proof that Saul is demanding of David. It's a little interesting twist, and it certainly doesn't go into a children's Bible story book. But the reference is there. You can go and read it. And so David goes, and he doesn't just kill 100 and prove. He kills 200 Philistines and then brings the proof back that he's killed them. So Saul has to allow David to marry Michal, and they get married, and it's a happy marriage for a good long time. Saul is still very, very angry, and he keeps trying to kill David, and he wants David dead. And first he orders Jonathan to kill David, and Jonathan talks him down out of that. You don't want me to kill David. David has done right by you. This is not a good thing for you. It's not a good look. Remember the whole Goliath thing. And Saul says, "Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I won't kill David." But again, time passes and Saul gets jealous again. He tries to throw his spear at David again. David again dodges it and goes home. And we know we're at sort of a breaking point here. And Michal, David's wife, Saul's daughter, says to David, we got to get you out of here tonight. Dad's going to try to kill you in the morning. And as it turns out, Saul has sent guards to surround the house and to bring David in the morning to be executed. But Michal sneaks David out, lowers him out a window on a rope. David runs away. In the morning, the soldiers come through the door, and they're going to arrest David. And Michal says, he's sick. And so they go back to tell Saul, David's sick. He can't come. And Saul says, bring him. Bring the bed. And so they go in, they grab the bed, they bring the bed. Michal has put pillows in the bed and blankets over the pillows, so it looks like someone's there. They get in front of Saul, they open the blankets, there's just pillows. Saul is so angry. He's so angry at his kids. Why would you defend this guy? He's going to take the kingship away from our family. This is just crazy. But David's run away, and he's gone to find Samuel. He tells Samuel all that's going on. And Samuel says, you just stay with me for a while. And they go to a place, Naioth, maybe? Naioth? Naioth? I don't know. Samuel takes David with him to Naioth, where Samuel is teaching the young prophets how to talk to God, how to listen for God's word. And David hangs out there for a while. Saul finds out that David's there, and he sends some soldiers there to arrest David. The soldiers go, and the Spirit of God falls on them, and instead of arresting David, they start to praise God, and then they go back to Saul. Saul's unhappy, sends more soldiers, same deal. Third time, sends soldiers, same deal. Finally, Saul says, all right, I'm going to go kill this guy myself. Saul goes to Naioth, and then he experiences the power of God, and he spends time praying and singing praise of God instead of capturing his enemy David. David comes back to court, and David and Jonathan talk, and David says to Jonathan, he really is going to try to kill me here. My life is just, this close to being over with your pop. And Jonathan says, no. I can talk him out of anything. Dad never does anything without talking to me. It's not that bad. And David says, okay, well, let's do this. There's a big feast coming up, and I'm not going to come. And if your dad's cool with that, then we'll know that maybe, I'm overreacting here. But if your dad is not cool with that, then we're going to know that he really does want me dead, and I have to have a plan to save my life. And Jonathan thinks that that's a good plan, and they make a deal about how Jonathan will get word to David about Saul's reaction. So the party starts. The first day, it's a 3-day party. Saul doesn't say anything. He just notices that David's chair is empty. Doesn't say anything. Second and third day, Saul goes nuts. He is unhappy. He feels disrespected. He thinks that David is trying to make some kind of point about attending the king being optional, and he's gonna kill him. He just violent threats after violent threats. So the next morning, Jonathan takes a little boy and they go outside of town. David's hiding nearby, and they've got this plan. They didn't know what sort of circumstances would be, and so they wind up actually not needing this plan, but they do it anyway. So Jonathan shoots some arrows, and if he tells the boy, no, the arrows are way beyond you, go further. That's the signal to David that you got to go further. And so Jonathan does that, and then the little boy brings the arrows back, and Jonathan sends the little boy back into town, and David comes out of hiding, and the two of them are actually able to talk to each other and to make promises of friendship to each other and to weep together that this is happening to them. And then David flees for his life. He goes to a place called Nob. Nob is where the tabernacle is these days. It's where the ark is, and it's where the high priest is. The high priest is a guy named Ahimelech at this time. And David, is running for his life, and he comes to Nob. He comes to Ahimelech, and he says, "Can you give me something to eat?" And the high priest is very confused to see David there by himself. And this is the son-in-law of the king. He's one of the commanders of the military. He's one of the most popular and well-known people in Israel. And Ahimelech says to him, "What's going on?" And David says, "I'm on a secret mission for the king. Can you give me something to eat?" And Ahimelech says, I don't have anything." And David said, "How about that bread over there?" And it's the show bread that every day the priests would put 5 loaves of bread on the altar as an offering to God. And nobody but the priests were supposed to eat them. That at the end of the day, the priests would take the bread off the altar and they could eat it. But Ahimelech gives it to David, and God allows this because David is God's anointed. He's the next king, and so he gets the bread from the high priest. And then he says to Ahimelech, he says, I left so suddenly I didn't have any weapons. Do you have any weapons that you could give me? And Ahimelech says, all I got here in the tabernacle is Goliath's sword. Do you want that? And David said, yeah. And so he gets Goliath's sword, and he remembers God's faithfulness and all that, and how God took care of him on that day long ago. The problem, though, is that David is seen by someone who's loyal to Saul. The guy's name, it's spelled D-O-E-G. How do you want to say that? Doeg? Doeg is one of Saul's herdsmen, takes care of Saul's animals. Doeg is a bad dude. Doeg sees David. He sees Ahimelech give David a sword. And David sees Doeg. And David knows that he's got trouble. He knows that Doeg is going to go right back to Saul and tell him where David is and what's going on. So he takes the sword and he gets out of there. Doeg does go back to Saul. David runs actually to the Philistines. And he tries to take refuge in one of the cities of the Philistines. He's recognized there, of course, and there are people who go to the king and say, "David is here. Let's capture him. The greatest warrior that Israel's ever known. Let's capture him." And while they're trying to figure this out, David realizes that he's swum into a net, and he starts acting crazy. He just acts like he's completely bananas. And this gets back to the king, and the king says, I don't need someone who's crazy in my court. And he has David kicked out of the city. So David goes back into hiding, and he hides in some caves. Now, word spreads where David is. David's folks, Jesse and Mom, come to him because their life has gotten hard as Saul wants to exact revenge on David. It's not safe for his parents. So his parents come to him. This makes David so sad. And he actually goes to Moab, and he talks to the king of Moab. He brings his mom and dad there, and he says, my great-grandmother was a Moabite. These are my folks. Can they just be here until I figure out what's going on for me in Israel? And the king of Moab, not a stupid man, wants to be on David's good side, and the king agrees. And so that's where mom and dad stay until things get resolved with David. Now, David, if mom and dad can find him, other people can find him too. And people start to gather around David. People who are in trouble, people who are in debt. They start gathering around David, and pretty soon he's got a little fighting force of 400 guys, and he's got a lot of people that he's protecting. Saul, meanwhile, knows that David's out there somewhere. He knows that somebody, or a lot of somebodies, know where David is, and nobody's telling him. And he gets really, really angry. And he starts making threats, and Doeg comes to the king and he says, I don't know why these guys aren't telling you. I know where David is. I saw him go to Nob. I saw him meet with Ahimelech. Ahimelech fed him, gave him Goliath's sword. That's what I know. Saul is so angry that he orders that Ahimelech and the other priests come to him. And when they come, he treats them unbelievably rudely. He screams at them, and Ahimelech is like, Your Majesty, I had no idea that there was trouble between you and David. I mean, he's your son-in-law. He's one of the commanders of your army. You trust him with everything. I gave him some food. I gave him a weapon because he needed a weapon. That's it. And Saul is just beside himself with rage, and Saul orders that Ahimelech and the other priests all be killed. Problem is that none of the soldiers are willing to carry out that order. They're afraid of Saul, but they're more afraid of God, except for Doeg. Doeg agrees to kill all these priests, and he does. He murders the high priest of Israel and all of the lower priests, and then he goes back to Nob, and he kills everyone he finds there too. Only one of Ahimelech's sons escapes, a kid named Abiathar. And he winds up finding David, and he winds up sheltering with David. And in the fullness of time, he becomes the high priest, and he serves David loyally during David's whole adult life and during David's reign. Meanwhile, though, Saul still wants David dead. And meanwhile, people start to know that David has his own little army. There's a little town of Keilah that the Philistines overrun, and the people of Keilah send David a message saying, we need help. David prays, and God says, well, go help them. So David and his little force go, and they have a smashing victory over the Philistines. Saul finds out about it, and Saul thinks that he's going to trap David inside the walls of Keilah. So, David traps the Philistines in, kills them. Saul's going to trap David, kill him. That's Saul's big plan. But David finds out about this. Abiathar and David both pray. God says, get out of there. So they get out of there. They melt into the surrounding countryside. And actually, David and Jonathan have an opportunity here to renew their friendship, and, as it turns out, to say goodbye. That this is the last time that David and Jonathan ever see one another in the land of the living. But David melts away, and Saul can't get him. And then this starts this sort of cat and mouse game where Saul is chasing David around everywhere. Sometimes he gets close, and then something will come up. Saul will get a message that the Philistines have come, and Saul will have to turn around and deal with the Philistines. I mean, he still is the king, right? And so there's this horrible game that plays. There's a time where David and some of his commanders are hiding in a cave. And Saul and his army are chasing them, and Saul goes past the cave and decides it would be a good place to take a nap. And so Saul goes into the cave, and he's asleep, and David's soldiers want to kill him. Let's kill him, then you can be king, and this is all done. We can bring our families out of hiding. And David's like, no, we cannot kill the Lord's anointed. So they instead sneak up, and David cuts off part of Saul's royal robe. In a little bit, Saul wakes up, heads out of the cave, and David follows him right out, right? And as soon as Saul's clear of the cave, David says, Your Majesty. Saul turns around. There's David standing there. David bows. And Saul is flummoxed. And David said, listen, I could have killed you in there. And he holds up the piece of the robe, and Saul looks, and yeah, a piece of his robe is missing. And Saul is struck in his spirit, just how small a man he is compared to David. And he is sorry that he apologizes to David, and he turns his army around, and they go back. He invites David to come home, but David knows that the wind is going to change directions again, and sure enough, it does. And pretty soon Saul has put together a little hunting army again, and he goes off again chasing after David. And again, this cat and mouse thing happens, across the hills and valleys of Israel. This time, Saul falls asleep. It's nighttime. Saul falls asleep, and David and one of his commanders, they sneak into Saul's camp. They find Saul's body. He's asleep. He's not dead. And the commander says, let's kill him. And David said, we've been through this. It's the Lord's anointed. We're not going to kill him. But they take his spear and they take his water bottle, which are right next to him. And then they sneak back out of camp. As soon as they get out of camp, David yells, Abner! That's the commander of Saul's army. Abner! What's the problem with you? Why is no one protecting the king? Abner comes awake. Everybody comes awake. Saul comes awake. Saul says, is that you, my son David? David says, I have the king's water bottle and the king's spear here. Why is nobody protecting the king? And Saul says, just bring him in. Bring him in. I'm so sorry, David. David's not stupid. And David says, no, you send someone out here to get him. And Saul sends someone out to get him. He sees it's his spear, it's his water bottle. He says to David, I'm so sorry. You come back, and we won't have any more trouble with each other. But David says, no, I'm not going to do that. And so David and Saul separate, and the Philistines actually give David a little city for him and his men and their families. I think they're figuring, if we could just keep him over there and off the battlefield, things will be better for us. So they actually give David a little city, and David lives in that little city until he finds out that Saul has died. Some years passed. Saul's a miserable old dude. He's still got this dark moods, whether it's spirit or mental illness, we don't know. He can't be consoled. He can't be helped. He can't be cheered up. He just feels bad all the time. He feels betrayed and abandoned all the time. He hates David all the time, but can't do anything about it. And there comes a day when the Philistines decide that it's time for another big battle with Israel. Their king is old and weak. Let's see what he's got. And so the Philistines march a big army into Israel, and Saul really wants to know what God thinks he should do. And the problem is Saul's killed all the priests. So it's hard to ask God what they should do. And so Saul panics, and again, he does something unbelievably wicked. He finds a witch who will do a seance for him to try to talk to Samuel's spirit. Samuel has died quite a while back, and Saul wants to speak to his spirit. The Bible absolutely forbids this. There's no question about this, that if you're trying to talk to the spirits of the dead, you are in real trouble with God. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't. Anyway, Saul does. And he gets to talk to Samuel. He gets to talk to Samuel's spirit. And I'm guessing the witch was as surprised as anybody. But Samuel's spirit wasn't in a really good mood about Saul breaking God's law like this, and says to him, tomorrow you're going to die, and all three of your sons dead. Tomorrow. Bye. Back. Well, that wasn't exactly the cheery news that Saul wanted, but what do? You're the king. Tomorrow's going to be a battle. So Saul goes into battle, and in the battle, he watches his three sons die. And he is grievously wounded. And he doesn't want to be taken alive by the Philistines because he thinks, probably rightly, that they'll torture him and have fun with him before he dies. So he has his armor bearer take his own sword, and Saul falls on his own sword, killing himself. Thus ends the story of the first king of unified Israel. That Saul and his sons are all dead on that field of battle. When we get back together, we'll talk about what happens next. But obviously, there is already an anointed king ready to take the throne. The people already love David. There's not going to be any battle for succession, and Saul's sons are all dead anyway. So David is going to be king, and when we get back together, we'll talk about that. You take care. There's a lot there for us to think about, right? And a lot of things that might be pretty troubling. So I'm glad that we're going to have the opportunity to talk together. Bottom line, I guess, for tonight is don't break God's laws. That God is gracious and kind, and God has given us laws to protect ourselves and to protect society. It's not that God doesn't want you to have fun. It's not that God is a bad sport. God wants you to be safe. And God has given us laws, the commandments and the others, that you and I are able to live in peace with one another and in peace with God. So you think about that. We'll talk about that. In the meantime, I have nothing but regard for you. I believe that God has chosen you and will be with you, and that you belong to God. You take care. Bye-bye.